So you're thinking about going to Scotland, or maybe you've already booked your flights, or perhaps you're leaving in a week or two. If you are looking for things to help you with your trip to Scotland, this is the video for you. Welcome to Travel Park Explore. In this episode, we will share tips to help you make the most out of your trip to Scotland. We'll cover things to do before you go, including tips on booking flights, rental cars, and attractions. We'll also talk about the local currency, ensuring your cell phone will work, and details about transportation and accommodations. All of these tips will help you have a smoother, less stressful trip. You can't afford to waste your valuable time while you're in Scotland, so pay attention to these tips so you can relax and focus on the fun stuff while you're there. If possible, try to fly direct to avoid the hassle of switching planes. If our first flight is delayed, you could miss your connecting flight and throw off the beginning of your well-planned trip. If you do decide to have a connecting flight, try to aim for at least 3 hours between changing planes so you'll have padding for any unexpected issues. We also recommend buying Fast Track for the day you will arrive in the UK and for the day that you will fly home. Fast Track allows you to skip long lines at passport control when you arrive in the UK, and it will also get you through security more quickly on the day you return home. When booking your flight to Scotland, you don't have to focus on flying to Edinburgh or Glasgow only. Flying into these cities can be expensive depending on where you are leaving from. We also noticed that many people choose to fly into London, but it's inconvenient because you will have to take another connecting flight to Scotland or take a long train ride across the entire country to the north. Manchester, Inverness, or Newcastle might be better options because they are further north than London and sometimes more affordable than flying into Edinburgh or Glasgow. It may be worth it to fly into a city like Manchester and then take a direct train or drive a rental car into Scotland. We also prefer packing light using carry-on luggage because this allows us to hit the ground running when we arrive in the UK. It also makes it easier to get around whether hurrying along a sidewalk in the city, hopping into a taxi, or trying to find a place for luggage on a train. If you do decide to just use carry-ons, be prepared to do laundry often. You will need to make sure your hotel or Airbnb has a washing machine available at least every 3 days or so throughout your trip. If you end up buying souvenirs on the trip and you run out of room in your carry-on, you can buy additional luggage at a local TK Maxx for a relatively low price so you can bring everything home. Having the local currency, known as the pound sterling, is essential when visiting the UK. There is no reason to get any pounds before you leave for your trip. Instead, you can use an ATM when you arrive in the country. ATMs should be available after you go through passport control. You may have to pay a small fee at the ATM to withdraw money, but it will still be cheaper than using a currency exchange service. Check with your bank and make sure your ATM card will work in the UK before your trip. We recommend the Schwab Bank Investor Checking Debit Card for international travel because they offer unlimited ATM rebates. Check the link in the description for more details. Most businesses in Scotland will accept credit cards, but if you're in more isolated areas, some places will only accept cash. It's a good idea to have some cash on you at all times, especially for pay and display parking machines. It would also be wise to search online for images of the UK currency before you go, so you can be somewhat familiar before your trip. Scotland and England both use pound sterling as their currency. Scottish pounds are issued by a Scottish bank and have different images printed on them as part of Scotland's national identity. Despite the minor differences, businesses in Scotland will happily accept English pounds, so if you start your trip in England, you can still use that money when you're in Scotland. It is also a good idea to have a credit card that does not charge foreign transaction fees. Transaction fees can add up quickly if you get charged each time you use your card. In addition, some cards offer insurance to cover you on car rentals, and some even offer trip insurance in case you have to cancel your trip. If these ideas interest you, do your research and find the right card that fits your needs. We'd like to Chase Sapphire Preferred Card. Click the link in the description for more details. Much like having money, having a working cell phone is essential when visiting Scotland. It is possible to have your cell phone carrier temporarily change your service so that you will be covered in the UK, but this can be expensive. An even better option is to buy a UK SIM card when you arrive in the country. Most airports have vending machines where you can purchase a SIM card to use while you're in the UK. If you fly into Manchester, for instance, they have a vending machine with SIM cards from multiple carriers. Pay attention to how much data each option offers. It is also a good idea to research which carriers provide the best coverage in the areas you will be visiting. A link to a mobile coverage checker is in the description. Keep in mind to use one of these SIM cards, your phone will need to be unlocked before your trip. If your phone is not already unlocked, make sure you start the unlocking process early so it will be completed well before your trip. Also, be sure you bring the PIN that came with your phone so you can switch SIM cards quickly at the airport. If you plan to use your phone and Google Maps for navigation, download maps of the areas where you will be traveling before your trip. Some areas in Scotland do not have the best reception, so having these areas downloaded ahead of time can be a lifesaver. It should go without saying, but make sure you have a car charger with you and maybe even a portable charger for long drives, especially in the Highlands. Driving in Scotland can be intimidating to anyone, especially those who are used to driving on the right. Our first piece of advice about driving in the UK is simple. You really don't need to be afraid. It is really not that bad and you will start getting used to it after about a day. Study roundabouts and road signs before you go on your trip so you're not caught off guard when you encounter something new. On motorways, which we call freeways or highways in the United States, drive in the left lane and use the right lane for passing only. Also, Scotland has speed cameras everywhere, so remember to take it easy and cruise in the left lane whenever possible. You don't want to be greeted with a bunch of tickets at the end of your trip. Many visitors seem to be concerned about driving on the A9, but in our experience, the other drivers were very courteous, and although the A9 was a little crowded, it was not difficult. The road can get busy around Perth, but as long as you are patient and courteous to others, you will be fine. When it comes to choosing a rental car, we find we don't need to have the smallest car available to fit into places in Scotland. We like to use a medium-sized vehicle like a small car-based SUV. If you're going to be traveling to remote areas like the Isle of Skye, you will need the ground clearance. The roads on Skye, for example, are riddled with potholes, and you will struggle more if you're in a small car that is low to the ground. However, we still recommend choosing the smallest car that applies to your situation. You will potentially be able to squeeze through tighter spaces more easily and hopefully use less gas. For extra peace of mind, we typically pay for full coverage insurance when we rent a car in the UK. It can be a little expensive, but to us, it's worth to have that extra assurance. Whatever you decide about coverage, it's a good idea to film and take photographs of any damage you see on your rental car before you leave the rental car park. This can be helpful if any problems arise when you return the car. Also, be sure to look up the ratings for whichever car rental company you are thinking about using, because the quality can vary widely by brand and location. We also recommend renting in less populated areas if possible, so you can get used to driving in a calmer environment. Plan your trip so you avoid driving in cities like Edinburgh and Glasgow, and use trains and taxis to your advantage. If you do plan to travel into isolated areas like parts of the Highlands, be sure you have plenty of gas. It's probably a good idea to always have at least half a tank because petrol stations can be somewhat uncommon. Gas is also much more expensive than in other areas of the world, so don't be surprised if it costs twice what you might expect. Also, take note that the gas pump handle for regular petrol is green in the UK, while diesel is black. This is the opposite of what we see in the United States. If you feel a little uneasy about driving, but you also want to maintain some control over your day-to-day itinerary, try a combination of driving yourself on some days and take other days off from driving and go on tours. Trains can be a great way to cover a lot of ground without having to drive. It's much better to sit back and watch the scenery go by than to deal with traffic and navigation while in an unfamiliar rental car. We use trains as a substitute for long drives whenever possible. A train can also take you from the bustling area near an international airport to a more quiet place to rent a car. Keep in mind, trains can't always get you where you need to go, especially more isolated areas, so a combination of trains and a rental car may work best. One major drawback of using trains is that they can be unreliable. Whether it's due to construction or worker strikes, a train cancellation can put a damper on your trip. You can start checking the status of the train route you want to take about 3 months in advance online. If you see a possible disruption listed on the train company's website, it might be best to avoid the train and make other transportation plans instead. You can also download the company's app to monitor the trains in real time if you do end up booking a train journey. If you are traveling with others and plan on taking multiple trips, you might want to get a national rail card to get a third off your train tickets. 2 types of rail cards that might benefit you are the Two Together rail card and the Family and Friends rail card. The cost of one of these rail cards at the time of recording is £30. Go to the National Rail website and calculate the cost of your train trips. If the card ends up saving you well over £30, then it'll be worth getting. Check the link in the description below for more details. It's definitely best to book your train journeys before you leave home, at least a month in advance. If a potential disruption is listed, it might be best to avoid booking. Before our last Scotland trip, we saw that the trains were disrupted due to construction, so we had no choice but to drive. If you have a journey booked and disruption does occur, the train company will try to accommodate passengers by getting you onto another train or providing a bus. Get to the train station about 30 minutes early so you have time to find the proper platform. The trains will be listed on the train departures board according to the last stop for each train, so you may not see the name of your destination listed. Use the train company app to determine the right platform or ask an employee at the station. If you have luggage with you, try to find your seat quickly and store the luggage on the rack where you can see it at all times. Most train cars have a luggage rack for larger bags at the end of each car and room for smaller bags in overhead storage. You will need to be prepared for lots of walking, especially if you're in a city like Edinburgh where driving is more trouble than it's worth. Taxis are definitely a good option upon occasion, but it's best to see Edinburgh on foot because there is something to see around every corner. Please be aware that, like many places in Scotland, Edinburgh is very hilly. Whatever you are picturing in your mind, there is a good chance Edinburgh is still more hilly than you've imagined. Comfortable shoes for a full day of walking are a must. It may sound like overkill, but building endurance before your trip will make your days in Scotland much more enjoyable. Try walking more and more each day in the months leading up to your trip and practice both hill and stair walking if possible. Also, be prepared for any type of weather while on foot. Rain and wind are a standard occurrence that you will have to get used to. Be sure to start checking the weather forecast about 2 weeks before your trip so you can pack accordingly. It's common to have 4 seasons in a day in Scotland, but the more details you have to help you plan, the better. If the weather catches you off guard, there are plenty of places to buy the clothes you need. And if you're going to be hiking around the Highlands, be prepared for midges. These small biting flies are known to swarm in the warmer months and can be a horrible nuisance. Midge spray is available in many of the area stores. We choose not to travel when it's mid-season to try to avoid them altogether, but if you do end up traveling in the Highlands between April and September, have some sort of plan in mind like face nets and spray. Whether you're planning on staying in a hotel, a B&B, or an Airbnb, you will need to book your accommodations well in advance. In fact, start booking your rooms as soon as possible after you book your flights and other transportation. Rooms can fill up quickly, and having a place with the right amenities and a convenient location will make your trip much easier. Rooms in the UK may have several differences that will be new to visitors. The first thing you may encounter if you're staying in an Airbnb could be a front door that is confusing to lock. While these locks may seem simple to a UK resident, a visitor may not know what to do. To unlock one of these doors, simply insert the key and turn it to unlock it like any other door. However, locking the door is a different story. To lock the door, first make sure it is shut completely. Next, raise the handle until you hear a click. Then release the handle, insert the key, and turn it until the door locks. Remove the key and check the handle to ensure the door won't open. On our first UK trip, we had never encountered one of these locks, and we struggled with it for a long time before we ended up locking it through trial and error. Just remember to lift and release the handle first before locking the door with the key. If you aren't already aware, you will probably need an adapter or a power converter for the outlet so you can use and charge your various devices. UK outlets are a different shape and a different voltage from other countries. For example, outlets in the United States are 120 volts, while UK outlets are 230 volts. It is important to understand the difference between a power converter and a power adapter. A power adapter simply adapts the shape of your plug, but it will not convert your device to the UK voltage of 230 volts. Luckily, most cell phones and laptops will convert the voltage themselves and should be able to handle a range of 100 to 240 volts. This means they will work throughout the world as long as you have an adapter to change your device's plug to the correct shape. Check the plug on your device to see if it can handle the proper voltage range. On the other hand, a power converter not only changes the shape of the plug, but it also converts the high UK voltage coming from the wall outlet to the lower voltage that your device needs. It is essential to use the right adapter or converter to ensure the safe and proper functioning of your electronics while traveling in the UK. Make sure you do your research ahead of time so you don't damage your devices or hurt yourself. UK outlets also have on and off switches for each individual outlet that you will need to turn on in order to be able to use them. Also be aware that bathrooms only have outlets for UK electric shavers. If you want to use a hairdryer, you will need to go into the bedroom to find a compatible outlet. Some other differences that visitors seem to notice are that most UK bathrooms don't have washcloths, and beds don't include a top sheet. If these are items you can't live without, make sure to pack your own or purchase them after you arrive. Some Airbnbs will only have hot water if the immersion heater is turned on. The immersion is a hot water heater that does not stay on constantly. Some of them will be set to run at certain times of the day, while others will require you to turn them on manually whenever you want hot water. The setup will vary from place to place. Washing machines can also vary greatly. In the UK, washing machines are often located in the kitchen. These machines are usually much smaller than in North America, so you may need to run more loads than you might expect. Some of the machines will also dry clothes, but if yours does not, be prepared to hang the clothes and wait a couple days for them to dry due to the climate. When it comes to attractions, it is best to book in advance whenever possible, especially if you're traveling during peak season. Popular places like Edinburgh Castle can sell out for the day and you won't be able to get in. Be sure to check the times of everything you want to see before your trip because the opening times can vary depending on the season. During quieter times, many attractions in Scotland may close altogether, while during peak season, hours may be extended. The main drawback of booking your attractions in advance is that you will be forced into a time schedule for your days. This allows little room for improvisation, and it can make things hectic if you plan too much. Book the things that really matter to you in advance to make sure you don't miss them, and keep things more loose when it comes to the rest of your day. If you're driving, keep in mind that it can take longer than expected to get from place to place due to different factors such as traffic, road quality, and weather. Don't hesitate to visit multiple castles and estates while you're in Scotland. You may feel like a bunch of old buildings can't really be that different, but we found that the castles and estates in Scotland were all unique and worth visiting. It's not a if you've seen one, you've seen them all situation. Also, take the time to tour at least one distillery even if you don't drink. Scotch whiskey is a huge part of the Scottish culture, and everyone should experience a tour just to understand the process and the history. Don't just see the big touristy things. Check out more specific local attractions and activities to get more insight into the culture. Take a tour of a farm to get a taste of local life, or try an Airbnb experience that fits your particular interests. We participated in a smoked salmon experience on the Isle of Skye, and it was one of our favorite activities on our trip. Speaking of the local culture, food is a great way to get a taste. From cozy, traditional pubs to Michelin-starred restaurants, Scotland has something to suit every taste and budget. When exploring Scotland, there are several must-try foods that will give you a good sample of what the country has to offer. Begin your dining experience with Scotland's excellent seafood. Enjoy the plump mussels, juicy langoustines, tasty crab claws, and flavorful oysters. Be sure to sample the famous Scottish smoked salmon, a delicate and smoky treat that melts in your mouth. Don't miss the chance to try haggis, a traditional dish made from sheep's organ meat, oatmeal, and spices. It may sound unappealing, but it is an essential experience, and its rich, savory flavors and hearty texture are surprisingly enjoyable. If you like sausage, there's a good chance you'll like it. For a classic meal, have some fish and chips, featuring crispy battered whitefish and perfectly cooked chips. Warm yourself with a bowl of Cullen skink, a creamy soup usually made with smoked haddock, potatoes, onions, and cream. Wash it all down with some iron brew, Scotland's most popular carbonated drink, which, if you can handle the sugar, tastes like a blend of orange and cotton candy. And if you have a sweet tooth, indulge in buttery shortbread and some tablet, a smooth, melt-in-your-mouth fudge-like treat with a sweet buttery flavor. These dishes will leave you with a memorable culinary experience and give you a taste of the diverse flavors of Scotland. You might even discover a new favorite food. Exploring local grocery stores and farmers markets can be a fun and exciting experience while traveling. It's interesting to see the unique products they offer that are different from home. If your accommodation has a kitchen, you might consider cooking a delicious meal using fresh, locally sourced ingredients. If you're looking for something easier, pick up a ready-made microwavable meal. Most grocery and convenience stores also have prepared sandwiches and salads that you can grab if you're in a hurry and just need something quick. Even if these options don't sound particularly thrilling, it can be surprising how different the food can be from what you're used to back home, and can still make for an interesting and excellent meal. Plus, grocery stores may help you save a little money, and that's always a good thing. Stay tuned for our upcoming Scotland travel series where we explore places like Stirling, the Highlands, and Edinburgh. We hope you found this video helpful and enjoyable. If you have any other tips, insights, or experiences you'd like to share with fellow viewers, please don't hesitate to comment below. If you found value in this content, we would be incredibly grateful if you could show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and safe travels!